If you search the early archives of the United States for the terms homosexual, gay, or transgender, the search returns absolutely nothing. This silence exists because the word homosexual wasn't coined until 1869. Historian Michael Bronski suggests modern labels are the wrong tools for this nap. By trying to add one gay person and stir into the existing narrative, we miss how these lives were lived. Stripping away these modern terms allows us to see how same-sex desires and non-conforming genders appeared in the records of the time, not as an addition to the American story, but as a constant presence through its most defining shifts. The first European colonizers brought a specific social architecture with them, a persecuting society that used the enforcement of rigid gender roles to stabilize its own power. This system was immediately challenged by indigenous nations that recognized fluid gender identities, roles that French explorers, lacking their own vocabulary, mislabeled as berdache. Because the colonizers had no category for this fluidity, they translated what they saw into the language of religious sin, utilizing terms like sodomites and crimes against nature. This vocabulary had physical consequences. Spanish explorers documented using mastiffs to kill indigenous men dressed as women. By labeling these populations as sexually unnatural, the colonizers created a legal and moral justification for the seizure of their lands. This policing of gender and sexuality provided the template for social control in the colonies, linking the idea of purity directly to the right of the state to exert violence. After the Revolution, the new republic worked to distinguish itself from Europe by inventing a rugged, hyper-masculine American man. This cultural project was so intense that the new states kept the old British sodomy laws as a way to police the boundaries of this new identity. But while public laws were strict, the private language of the era allowed for something else: romantic friendship. In his personal letters, George Washington received messages of tender and inseparable love from the Marquis de Lafayette. These intensely passionate bonds between men were a standard part of how the new nation's leadership built their social and political networks. At the same time, figures like the public universal friend Jemima Wilkinson and the soldier Deborah Sampson used the era's language of spiritual and patriotic liberty to live outside of traditional female roles, often with the public's fascination and eventual support. The survival of the early republic relied on this dual track: a public demand for masculine conformity and a private space that accommodated profound, fluid same-sex devotion. Westward expansion pushed these boundaries further, as the vocabulary shifted toward the myth of the outlaw and his partner. Frontier life offered an escape from the civilizing force of the heterosexual home. Men lived in homosocial communities, where lines like, "I feel his knee rub mine the good old way," were written into popular range poetry. This environment birthed the first recognizable queer urban spaces. In Gold Rush San Francisco, the lack of traditional families and a booming economy created a wide-open town where same-sex dancing and gender-bending entertainment were part of the local fabric. Back in the East, a different code was forming in the pages of American literature: the language of sympathy. Writers like Ralph Waldo Emerson and Emily Dickinson used classical mythology and the concept of deep sympathy to express same-sex desire. Dickinson's poems to Sue Gilbert used erotic metaphors that the society of her time could read as either friendship or something much more intimate. From the rugged frontier to the desks of New England, these individuals were using the available language of their day to write themselves into the creation of the American identity. We can track the lineage of these lives through the words they left behind, from the language of sin used by their persecutors to the language of sympathy used by their poets. These individuals were present at every major turn, pioneering the frontier, shaping the nation's literature, and defining the republic's emotional bonds. If the history of the United States is built on the lives of those who defined its wars, its culture, and its very boundaries, then that history is inseparable from the queer people who were there from the start. To understand one is to finally see the other.